Welcome into the starting 11. I am Will West alongside my cohort, Chris Carroll. Chris, here's what we do. We talk about the EPL. We talk about soccer every single Monday afternoon. 3:05 is when you can watch us stream live, and you can catch other content throughout the week. Like, subscribe to the channel if you so desire. Chris, how are you, sir?
Bit nervous this week, Will, after Wolves' display and hanging around in that relegation zone. But I'm well, thank you, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing well. Got to get an Everton match going on right now with Spurs. So hoping for the best. At this point, though, it does feel a little bit like a lost season. And now I'm a little bit concerned because I think a lot of Spurs fans thought we have Julian Nagelsmann. He's the guy. He's going to be the replacement for Antonio Conte. And now there's a lot of competition for the top managers that are available. Let's go ahead and get to it, Chris. Graham Potter out at Chelsea. Let's start here. What went wrong? Why didn't it work for Graham Potter at Chelsea?
Yeah, so much for giving him time, and a chance to build a team. 5-year contract, and then 3 months later, he's gone. I think what went wrong was that whether it was him, and I don't think he had too much to do with it, that the owner just bought too many players at once. And he walks in, he's trying to keep all those players happy, big players as well, with big personalities, big egos, and he's trying to please everybody. He'll probably look back and think, I should have just been a bit stronger and stuck to my guns there, and because he's the one who's gone. But that's what I think. I think he walked in, he's got just too much on his plate with so many new signings.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there that there was a lot on the plate. I also think he mismanaged it. And I think that he struggled with so many new signings and with such an unbelievable wealth of talent. I think that Potter struggled putting players in the right position at times. He did deal with injuries. Let's be very real. I don't remember the last time I saw a team deal with as many injuries in one season as Chelsea has. I mean, remember when Salah went out for Liverpool, what that looked like for Klopp. I mean, earlier this year for Liverpool when Van Dijk got hurt. Now imagine a third of your team's out, So it's just unreal what he dealt with the Pulisic injury and the Conte injury and the injury to Mason Mount and on and on and on and on. And they continue Sterling and they continue to deal with these. Aubameyang still training, trying to get in. Yeah. So I think some players were bought in that they didn't need. I think they had too many players, and sometimes maybe it's a little easier for you or if you're some managers. If you have a dyed-in-the-wool, I know this is my left wing, I know this is my right wing, I know this is my center forward, I know this is my attacking midfielder, maybe that becomes easier because it just seemed like he never could work out an 11 that he felt comfortable with or that was going to work for him. And I do wonder if maybe he's just one of those managers that's, look, there are certain coaches and managers who are better at, you have an unbelievable wealth of talent, let's manage all of the personalities in that and get them on the same page and get them to play well together. I wonder if Graham Potter's not okay, here are our upstarts and let's play to our strengths and let's try to hide our weaknesses. And maybe he's just that kind of manager instead of being an elite worldwide manager. He's just a really solid manager and maybe can get the most out of a club that is lacking when it comes to talent.
And maybe he believed them when they told him he'd got time. So maybe he wasn't in too much of a panic. They weren't going to get top four after a while. They weren't going down. They're still in the Champions League. So he's perhaps gearing towards that. But, you can't believe anything that's told you these days in the game of football, in the game of soccer. It's every man for himself. And the first guy that's going to go is the coach. And unfortunately, yeah, it looked like he was trying to please everybody. He should have gone with his best 11. I mean, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think, and we said should have gone with his best 11. Those who aren't happy, tough, break into the 11. Injuries come as they only know too well, and progress. But there was no stability. And I think once the fans turn on you, then the ownership are looking and more seriously about getting rid of him. And I think that's what did it in the end. I think the fans just flipped, they turned against him. And then it became toxic at the stadium at Stamford Bridge. And then there was no going back. So, if the fans, if it had been pleasing on the eye and the fans were with him and they could see some kind of pattern and some development, I think he'd have bought himself more time. But the fact that there was nothing, I think it was just inevitable.
I also think the players didn't respond to him. So maybe it was that maybe he was too wishy-washy. Maybe he didn't roll with a strong enough fist. I don't know. But Clearly, the players that were there didn't buy into him, but then you saw them buy on players, and those guys didn't respond to what Potter was saying either. I mean, you bring in Enzo Fernandez at 121 million euros. This they're in the winter. You got virtually nothing out of him at this point. You bring in João Felix and at 123 million euros. You've gotten very little out of both of those guys at this point. So they're not, whether it's Potter's fault or not, I don't know, but he clearly wasn't the solution. And at some point in time, you can't just continuously underperform. I think this year they've lost to Fulham, they've drawn Fulham, they've drawn Everton. Like they're just not a very good team right now, and there's far too much talent there for them to be a bad team. Right now, Chelsea, frankly, is a bottom half of the table team, and when you spend that much money, eventually people are going to ask you for results, and Graham Potter was never capable of getting Chelsea the results. And yes, he dealt with injuries, but man, did you have depth. And so you had players that were good enough to beat the teams that you drew with West Ham this year. I mean, since 2023 started. And it's not just the singular draws and losses to the teams that you drew and you lost to. It's just a matter of that many in just a 3-month period when we've already kind of given you a couple of months where you've underperformed as it is. I don't know that Graham Potter could have expected a whole lot else. Well, yes, they lied to him and told him that he was going to have time. I don't know what the other answer was here. If you're Chelsea, you've never finished the bottom half of the table, right? And you're absolutely going to finish in the bottom half of the table with Graham Potter. And it just looked like he didn't have anything figured out. There was no trend in the right direction. It didn't seem like the team had turned their club and could turn the corner with him. So I don't know what the other answer was besides get rid of Graham Potter, try to bring someone else in. Not that it was his fault, but he definitely wasn't the solution to their problems.
Yeah, and you can go on about injuries, or one can go on about injuries, but the immediate answer from pretty much every club in that league would be, well, hey, you've got so much depth. And if you can't get a tune out of that squad, then there is something wrong. And maybe, we don't hear everything, and maybe they had turned on the coach. I've read reports that the players really weren't motivated by him or inspired by him, and perhaps a little bit confused. And once the players take the foot off the gas, then they know they're not going to be the first out the door. They know the coach is going to be out the door. So, yeah, he was on a real no win, and it's amazing, isn't it? It's just how he does so well at a club like Brighton and the club before Brighton. And then he comes into a Chelsea, and it's a completely different dynamic, and it's kind of like he's never been a coach before. It's such a fine line, and it just shows that you can't take anything for granted in the manager's game and the management game. And yeah, it was getting embarrassing for Chelsea and humiliating because of the slide. Like you say, they don't finish in the bottom half of the table, but that's how it's looking.
So where do they go from here? The top odds-on favorite, according to betting markets, is Julian Nagelmann. Pochettino very close, as well as a close second when it comes to betting. Silva also was one that I saw that could be a possibility for that job, but those two seem to be the odds-on favorites. Where do you think Chelsea goes from here?
It's interesting that when Nagelmann was available, that's when they pulled the plug. So it looks like that's who they got in mind. Again, reports are that Nagelmann's got a good relationship with Todd Bowley, the owner of Chelsea. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would imagine he'd be their first pick. Luis Enrique is another one who's floating around, former Barcelona, Spain manager. So he could be a good fit. He's used to dealing with guys in the changing room, big egos in the dressing room. So I think it'd be one of those two, Nagelsmann or Luis Enrique.
It's okay. So let me ask you this. Do you think that they made that move because they said, okay, yes, we said we're going to give Graham Potter time. We're not trending in the right direction. Tottenham's going to hire Nagelmann if we don't hire him. And I mean, is this what it is? Is this musical chairs right now? Is that what we're seeing in the managers markets? Because there were a lot of people that said Bayern fired Nagelmann when they did to be able to get Tuchel because they thought Tottenham was going to go hire Tuchel. So Tuchel goes to Bayern. Bayern fires their manager. The manager at Bayern now, it looks like everyone thought, okay, he's going to get the Tottenham job this summer. And maybe Chelsea decides to go ahead and pull the trigger on Graham Potter so that they can get Nagelmann before Tottenham has the opportunity to. Are you buying any of that?
Yeah, I am. It's a big game of chess, isn't it? And again, it's amazing how what a business where you can fail at a club get paid off a few million. Next week, you're back in with another few $1 million contract, at a new club, and perhaps do really well there. So yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot in that. It's all in the timing, because if Nagelman got snapped up by Spurs, Chelsea wait till the summer. Who do they go with then? Pochettino, he's around? Does he get snapped up by someone else? So yeah, I think timing's everything. I think they're looking at the big manager merry-go-round, as they call it. Zidane's in there as well, just quietly waiting for his favorite spot to come available. So yeah, it is. It's a manager merry-go-round. Lose a job, get a job, and be comfortable. Thanks very much.
Well, so if Chelsea, you think it's going to be Nagelman? Is that who you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I think it will be. Or Conte back there. Who knows? What about that?
Yeah.
He did okay at Chelsea.
He did do pretty darn well at Chelsea. I think it'll be Nagelman as well. And where does that leave Spurs? That's the question for me at that point. It's the one place it leaves you is the going back to Pochettino hat in hand, right?
Yeah. Do you think that I don't think that'd be a bad outcome for Spurs, do you?
No, not at all. Not at all. And especially they'll sell Harry Kane this summer. They'll get 80 to 100 million pounds for him and bring in a couple young players. And Pochettino seems to work well with that. I hate to see Pochettino there without Kane. Hate to see Kane go, but if he ever wants to win silver, he has to get away from Daniel Levy. And Pochettino can overachieve with young players with a lot of pace, playing his style. I mean, he still won the French league last year. Pochettino did, even though he's out. So, I mean, I think a lot of times we act like he failed last season with PSG. He absolutely did not. It just didn't work necessarily with the big stars and Pochettino. All right, so from Potter being out, now Brendan Rodgers. We've discussed this for the last few weeks, Chris. Brendan Rodgers now out at Leicester City. What happened there with Brendan Rodgers? Because he was a hot name for some of the big six jobs, and now he's out of a job himself just a year later.
And again, it's amazing how it goes, isn't it? Rodgers, unbelievably successful with Celtic in Scotland, and with Leicester when he comes down here. Well, I say comes down. I'm in the States, so when he came down to England from Scotland, and they won the FA Cup. He won the FA Cup with Leicester
just 2 years ago. Yeah,
I know, and so close on two occasions to getting top four, and that's the biggie. I think that's where it turned. They didn't quite. If they'd have made the top four on either of those occasions, money comes into the club. They attract players. They build the team. They build the squad, and they go again. But they didn't on both occasions. They fell away and finished outside the top four. And here they are. And I think that was the start of the decline. It's so hard to go again and stop that big snowball going downhill. And that's what's happened. And the club had no money to buy players with. So yeah, he's having trouble working with the players he's got. And there's some decent players there, but it's all gone wrong very quickly. I mean, it's been the reason they pulled the trigger on him now is that it's been alarming, the fall. It doesn't seem long ago, a couple of months ago, you look at the table, Leicester was sort of mid-table, perhaps just top half, looking okay. And then the fall has been dramatic, and now they're in the bottom three. So I think they've had to do it.
Yeah, look, being in the bottom three right now, I don't think they had a choice. They had to try something different because it clearly wasn't working with Rodgers. I don't think it's Rodgers' fault. I think that Brendan Rodgers, I have been really intrigued about this entire Leicester City thing. And so seeing kind of what's happened and reading up on what's happened behind the scenes has been interesting, reading the local papers there. They built a new training facility. They built on a King Power, and they've given them elite infrastructure. That's what they've done at Leicester City when they did not have that for a really long time, and it would be difficult to bring in talent. But they didn't give him talent. Right now, that's not a very good team. If you look at the 11 they threw out of the field this weekend against Palace, I look, as a Spurs fan, and we could use even some depth. I don't want any of those guys even to be second team players except Madison. So, and he could be a starter just about anywhere he wants to go. It's a bad roster. It really is. The problem is, according to the reports locally, Leicester City couldn't spend to bring in players, and when they couldn't spend them because of financial fair play issues, because of how much they'd spent on rebuilding the infrastructure of the stadium and the training grounds there. So once they'd done that, there was no more cash available. They had to pull the purse strings back a little bit. And then I think it didn't help Brendan Rodgers when he was asked about, the issues that they have. His response was, well, we weren't able to spend during the window like everybody else was. Oh, well, that's not something that, especially when the board's had your back the way that the board has had Rodgers back all through this as the fan base has gotten angry, that's not the right response to kind of throw the board under the bus.
Really?
Even though it's true, we don't always say the thing that's true, right? You don't walk up to someone elderly on the street and say, you look really old. Rodgers told the truth in a way at a time when you're not supposed to tell the truth. And he should have said, hey, we have a great squad. I believe in my squad, because it also sends a message, I think, publicly to your squad that it's okay to not be good because you're not good enough. And the roster's not good enough, but you have to have some level of belief behind the scenes and in that changing room, right? If you're Leicester City. And how do you do that when your manager's on a microphone in front of the entire world saying you're not good enough? That's got to be very, very difficult. And I think Leicester City had to make a move so that they don't get relegated this year.
Yeah, for sure. That wasn't the right thing to say. Your players don't want to hear that, and it could have been more positive. There's still players like Tielemans, Harvey Barnes, Maddison, as you mentioned. Vardy Vardy isn't a bad option to starting or off the bench. It started with most clubs. I know he's coming to his legs are going. He's coming to the end of his career, or the twilight of his career, if you like. But there's 4 players there, decent players going forward that got goals in them. And they're not getting battered by teams, but they're not scoring for whatever reason. So it's all gone. And now relegation is a real possibility for them. And after such a fantastic, what is it, 7, 8 years, perhaps 9, 10 years even, it looks like they're going back. They're right in there with the clubs. That's how they used to be. That's where they used to be, Leicester, right there as a yo-yo club between the Championship and the Premier League. And it's kind of back to being, Leicester, and all the other clubs are going, well, welcome back. Hope you had a good time. And hey, I bet they have had a great time. But FA Cup and the Premier League. But this is where Leicester have always been. And I think they're clutching at straws. Might be too late now to turn the ship around.
Okay, so possible replacements for Brendan Rodgers. The betting markets have Graham Potter at even money, meaning it's as likely as not that Graham Potter's going to be the next, according to the betting markets, that Graham Potter's going to be the next manager at Leicester City. And then Rafael Benitez is one name that's been repeatedly brought up as a guy to come in and just put the fire out and get them through the end of the year. Do you like either of those options for Leicester City?
I like Potter for Leicester City. I don't see an argument against that, other than him being like shot to pieces at the moment psychologically. Potter looks like he's aged 10 years in the last 3 months. That's what it does to you. But I could see Leicester being more like a Brighton. They're not as good on as good a footing as Brighton are at the moment, but I could see that suiting him and them giving him time. If you can believe any of that, like we said, they could see him giving him time and him rebuilding Leicester. So I think Potter would be a good bet. I think. Who was the other one you just mentioned?
Yeah, Potter and Rafael Benitez.
Benitez. He more of a temporary stopgap, I think, and I think Potter could. I think Potter is more of a long-term solution for them.
I think Potter's used to dealing with the situation that Leicester's in right now too, where there's pace up front for Leicester. That's a slow midfield, and so we saw something kind of similar at Brighton at times, where he didn't have the same level of athletes in the midfield, so he just didn't play through the midfield as well as much, right? So he'll work around what you have. He's that kind of tactician, and I think Leicester City needs that right now, because if they want to stay under financial fair play rules, they probably can't spend even that much this summer either. And so if they're able to stay up, maybe Graham Potter's a guy that can get the most out of that team right now and get them to being back at least mid-table, because that's kind of where they're going to have to be if they want to then be able to attract that talent that they're hoping that the infrastructure that they've just built will help them to be able to attract. All right, and then our last thing I want to get to with you, Chris, Newcastle. 3 straight wins. We were throwing dirt on them, saying, oh, here's Newcastle. They're falling by the wayside. It'll be a mid-table finish, which is a nice finish for Newcastle. Here they are with 3 straight wins. They're third right now with a match in hand against both United and Tottenham, and they're crushing it at the top of the table again. They can't catch City. They can't catch Arsenal. But my goodness, Newcastle and Eddie Howe have really turned things back around. What is fueling this resurgence, in your opinion?
Team spirit, in 2 words. I think they're riding the wave of confidence. And it's not coincidence. They've put a team together, not of superstars. They've been careful who they've recruited. They've gelled. It's taken them a little bit of time, but they've gelled now. You watched it. Well, I watched the Man United game or part of it, and they looked on a different level to Man United. You could tell the team spirit was unbelievable. They defend solidly. They've got the best defensive record in the Premier League, so they defend solidly. They put a great back four together, and again, Trippier is probably the only household name. You got a Dutch guy, a Swiss guy, and a Dan Burn on the other side. On the other side to Trippier, they're a solid back four. But the whole team defends well, and when they attack, they look exciting. So you can do both. So great job, Eddie Howe, because you got a team. It's like these days, you got to play one style or the other. You got to park the bus or be defensive and go on the fast break, or you've got to go all out and just sort of high press and attack from the top. And they're doing both. They can do both. They can defend and they attack. When they win the ball, there's 4 or 5 players in the Newcastle team that are so exciting, and the whole team looks good defending and going forward. And so I think it's just getting all the pieces of the puzzle together. There's no superstars, no big egos, no trouble in the changing room, and it's paying off.
I think one thing that has really helped him is Isak's gotten a lot better. He's 23 years old from Sweden. He's been fantastic at striker. The last 3-4 weeks, he has really been incredible. He's had 3 goals the last month. And I think that helps it out, because if you see the run they were on in the first half of the season, Newcastle, Almiron with 6 goals in October was a huge part of that. But you couldn't count on that happening because he'd never done that when he was in the MLS, much less are you going to continue to do that in the EPL. But if you have a legitimate number 9 that can put the ball in the back of the net, it opens things up for other players. And that's what we're seeing right now for Newcastle, because you're right. They've been able to defend all season long. They just couldn't get goals. Now they're getting goals. And they have some young players. And look, they still make mistakes in that attacking third. But one thing I noticed yesterday about the United match, how many times did you see them catch United with too many players forward? And right now, how many other teams love to send their love to send their fullbacks forward? They love to get everybody forward. And over again, Newcastle kept catching them with too many guys forward, and they had the same level of pace. Their front 3 had as much pace as your back 2 or 3 that were there. And either they had a man advantage because you set both of your fullbacks forward, or it was 3-on-3, and you're able to. The passing lanes are there. It's just you're able to take them out of shape, or if you have one guy that's able to beat his man off the dribble, then all of a sudden you're wide open for things. And Newcastle just repeatedly found themselves in that position because of how well they were able to defend. And when the turnover came, they got the ball forward quickly, and Manchester United was just behind.
Yeah, and it's Shaw and Botman are the 2 centre-backs whose names escaped me just a couple of minutes ago. Winning some great balls, and they were playing it out. And Botman had an unbelievable game, in my opinion. Well, both of them, but Botman, he's passing. He's come from he's a Dutch, so he's come through the Dutch way of playing, and they're comfortable with the ball at their feet. Bruno in the centre of midfield, Guimaraes, unbelievable as well, and they just go, and they go quickly, and like you're right, fast break, but they all go together. It's not just 1 or 2. By the time they get up there, there's 3 or 4 in the area, in the penalty area, waiting for that cut back or the shot from the edge of the box, or getting in the box. You got Wilson in the box making a nuisance of himself. Sam Maximan looks fantastic. Longstaff's up there as well. He's playing really well at the moment. Willock's playing well.
Willock's playing really well. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are all names that aren't big superstars that are, they're close to 50 million even. They've been carefully put together, carefully coached. And Joel Linton, I mean, Eddie Howe's turned him around as well, made a midfielder out of him. But he was on the bench on Saturday or Sunday. So they got depth as well now. And they didn't have depth before. So, they're looking really good, Newcastle. I like it. I like what they're doing. And the atmosphere up there is unbelievable.
It is. All right. So top of the table, how do you see this playing out right now? Is it Arsenal 1, Man City 2? We really have 4 teams for 2 spots right now. And this is also kind of a game of musical chairs. Who finishes in those final 2 spots?
Well, I think, and going on current form, and that's what I got to go on. So current form says Newcastle finish third, and I can see. Well, current form goes a little bit out the window here, but current form, Spurs, then it's Spurs or Man United for me. Manchester United they just look too fragile when it's not going for them. When the pressure's on, there's too many characters in that team. Unlike Newcastle, who all stick together, Man United, they start throwing their arms around and start picking on each other. So it's the Harry Kane factor. I can see Spurs finishing fourth. So I got Man City first, Arsenal second. I got Newcastle third, and I got Spurs fourth. And I got Man City just sneaking it because of the experience. But your guy Kane, I think he'll just, you can't bet against Kane. He's always there. Doesn't matter how badly the team's playing. You got Kane in your team, and he's going to keep knocking the goals in. So I've just got Man United falling away.
I'll say that I think Arsenal holds on. I do. Yeah. I think that they're able to 12 points right now. That just seems too far. And so I think that they hold on. And then I'll take City second. I'm kind of hoping, because we've given the kiss of death to some other teams, I can give the kiss of death to Arsenal as well as a Spurs fan. I think you're right. I think Newcastle finishes third, especially now that other guys are chipping in goals, right? That's the thing that they've missed the entire time. Newcastle had gone from Boxing Day to March 12th without scoring multiple goals in a match. That is a long stretch. And since then, they've done it 3 matches in a row. So this is they're just playing so well right now. But there's nothing weird or outlandish. I mean, I know I brought it up a lot during the fall, but it's just there was no way Almiron was going to continue to score the way that he did. So I just had a hard time believing Newcastle was going to be able to finish in the top 4. But now they have other guys throwing in goals as well, other guys making plays for them as well. It isn't just one guy and then great defense. It's 6, 7 guys that you have to worry about, and some depth up front. So I think Newcastle does get it done. And I do think United still does have too much. And I wonder Spurs, it feels like a lost season for them with now the Conte's gone, the Lloris injury. It is hard to count out Harry Kane, but man, it's Harry Kane in a Herculean effort, having to throw the entire team on his back right now because of some injuries that other guys have had. And I just don't know if he can necessarily do that. So I think it's going to be United. What do you think's happened with Liverpool? Because they just got ran by Manchester City on Saturday. And this was a team that a couple of weeks ago, I think we both thought, goodness, they're going to be fantastic. They finally are back in form. Van Dijk is back. What's happening with Liverpool in your mind?
I think it's just it's a confidence thing now. It's like they're not. It's like they're rabbits in headlights. They're not sure under pressure. They go a goal down or another goal down, and then they're done. And it was the other day against Manchester City. It was like they gave up after they went. Did they go 1 up? Yeah, they went 1 up.
Yep.
And then equalize, and then 2-1 down, and it was all over. And it was as though they're thinking now like lower half of the table teams, like relegation team. The relegation mindset, when you go behind, you think, here we go again. Here's another loss. And it looked like on Saturday that's how the players were. Now there's enough. I don't think that they're imploded and it's going to collapse on them for the rest of the season. I still think they're going to go again, because there's enough experience in there and there's enough old heads that are going to talk to the player. I think it was just it was a particularly bad day against Man City, and I think they'll come again. But yeah, I think I just going back to Tottenham for a second, Will, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think Pochettino comes in soon. Harry Kane and Harry Kane are like this. They have a fantastic end of season. Harry Kane stays at Spurs, and all's rosy.
From your mouth, the God's ears, Chris. I hope that it works out that way. That is Chris Carroll. I am Will West. If you like more EPL and football soccer content, subscribe to the channel. We'll have content for you all week long throughout the entire season. This is the Starting 11.